What are you? It's a question that is asked so often of biracial people. It's an invasive and offensive way to inquire what someone's ethnic background is. But it's a question that led my guest, comedian, actor, and filmmaker Anastasia Washington, to create not only a short film, but content that addresses this line of questioning and other hurdles that come with being biracial. As a multi-hyphenate talent, Anastasia is making waves, making a name for herself, and truly having conversations that need to be had. You're listening to We Need to Talk. Anastasia Washington, thank you so much for being on We Need to Talk today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, you are a multi-hyphenate, as most people are these days. You have to be.
You have to.
I remember the days when they're like, you have to pick one lane, and now they're like, why do you only do more than one thing? It's really interesting how that culture has
I
changed,
know.
right?
I remember them like I was always kind of like had my hands on too many things, and they were like, you just got to pick one. And I was like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
You
See, I'm glad that we resisted, because I was always, someone told me I had multi-goal syndrome, and I'm like, yes, I do have multi-goals, and I'm going to accomplish all of them. So I love that you are in that now. But now it's like a thing. You have to be a multi-hyphenate to even succeed and get anywhere. Yes, absolutely. But what I love in reading about you and looking up your interests and your passions, you've been using your platforms to produce content that really raises awareness about things that I'm very passionate about and some really difficult topics. I mean, obviously my podcast is called We Need to Talk.
Yes.
It's all things that we need to talk about. And I really love and appreciate people that do so, because, I think it's easy in the world of social media to make things seem like it's an Instagram filter, but the world is filled with real issues that we need to talk about. But you also use your platforms with a lot of joy and laugh, because I know you're a comedian. So I love that you found that balance of comedy and surface level stuff, but also like deep, hard-hitting issues that need to make you think. So I think that's really, really great. And one of the other things that I found really interesting and compelling about you is that you aren't afraid to do it. That's the thing, getting past that fear.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, starting with something that is very personal to me, because I am raising a biracial child. My husband is white. I really want to talk a little bit about your journey of being biracial in America, because my daughter's 3 and she's now started to notice the difference in skin color. Mommy's darker, daddy's lighter. I'm in the middle. I'm kind of brown, but it's not like an issue for her. And we're like, yeah, we're different. Like that makes that makes you special. So, what was your life like growing up being biracial in America, and how did you figure out how to navigate that?
I mean, it's there have been different things, I think, that have like been flagged my journey over the years. I'm light skinned compared to most of my family members, but I've always identified as a woman of color. That is something that my mom really wanted me and my family members to instill in us, is that we are part of this community, and that we're like a bridge in this community, and it's a heavy responsibility. You know what I mean? It's not that easy. And I think the way I always coped was humor, obviously, even in the tough conversations or the tough situations. But when you're really young, like my mom always tells a story that my sister used to draw all men different colors. No man, like when she was drawing, at school or something, was white. They were all different colors, because in our family, most of the men are Black, Japanese, Mexican, Colombian, everything. And the women in our family, a majority of them were a lot of white women. So she would draw a lot of white women. And somebody told her, one of her teachers, like, that is wrong. So a teacher told her that's wrong. And my mom was like, that's her reality, and that is fine. You never tell her that that's wrong. I think it's, a little bit different now. There's a lot more diverse families. When I was a kid, it was a lot more rare. But I think there's like a way to handle it. Like my mom always kind of gave us confidence. Like we would always get weird looks. Like we would walk in and we would get huge, like weird looks. And my mom would be like, it's just because we're such a good looking family. you know?
I love that.
And so
I
like
love
I
that.
didn't really realize it was weird until like my first major like racist incident. And even
Mm,
then I was like, well, but we're but like we're cool. We're a cool family, so I think that was cool, like to just like always have confidence in our family.
yeah.
Um and then when I found out things were like weird to people, I was like, wait a minute, it came from a place of confidence, and joy and humor, um, because that's the way my family dealt with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And as you got older, where are you
I'm
from?
from Los Angeles, born and raised.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah, different
I'm from Southern
dynamic.
California too. Yeah, but I'm from Santa Barbara, so that was a very different experience, I'm sure. But as you got older and living in LA and you started to see more diversity happen, like how did you react to that? Like, was it a place of joy or was there like a little bit of sadness? Like, I wish I kind of had this growing up, like this perspective.
Oh, I always look at it as a joy. I think
Great.
when I see a fellow like mixed family or mixed person, I'm just like I'm so excited. Like I
Yeah.
we give each other that look, like that look of recognition. And I think it opens like conversations too. Like when I see a young couple with a young kid that's got hair like me, I'm always just like, oh gosh, like I know what you guys have been through and what a joy to have like brought something so beautiful into this
Yeah.
world, despite, you know, conversations that I'm sure every family has had. Like my mom and dad were told, you want to get married? Fine. Don't have kids. Don't bring them into this. Don't make this a
Mm,
thing. And to see like beautiful mixed children bridging that gap of division is so beautiful. Um,
yeah,
because once kids start happening, people start um they start shutting up a little bit, a little bit.
for
Your
sure.
family starts
For
shutting up a
sure.
little bit. They're like, oh, now
Yeah.
the kids are here. We can only protest so much. Um, um,
Right.
I mean, they do.
Right.
I'm not saying they won't.
No, I get you for sure. You also created a short that won some awards that kind of addressed your racial ambiguity,
Yeah.
and the question I know that a lot of my biracial friends get, and which is the title of your short, is what are
Yes.
you? Which, I mean, my God, I've always found that to be so offensive because it's like, well, one, I'm a human. That's
Right.
what I am. Like,
Hmm.
and if you want to know, just there's a different way to word it. Like, what's your racial identity or what's your racial background or what's your ethnicity,
Yeah.
right? But not what are you? So I would love for you to just talk a little bit about your short, why you decided to make it, and even share some of the experiences you've had of like coming up against that question, which I'm sure you received a lot in your life.
Yeah, and it doesn't actually stop. I talk about this a lot in my one woman show too. It's like the things that people feel that they can ask you. Now, like when I was a teenager and like even maybe like a young like a older kid, I felt very defensive by these statements. I felt very like offended. Like nobody really wants at those ages to be different, and I
Right.
automatically was different. I'm a tall woman, I'm a curvy woman. Even when I'm skinny, I'm curvy. I have curly hair that's like a strange color. I'm, like there's some like I walk in a room and it's like, what is that? And as a teenager, nobody wants that. Like nobody wants that.
Mm,
And so I became really offended by that through my teens, I will say, like defensive and whatever. And then I think as I grew older, I kind of started embracing the fact that I was different and that I didn't want to be like everybody else. And there's something about standing out that's really special, especially if you're a performer. Um,
yeah.
it takes a while to get there, it takes a while to get there. But and then I just started joking about it, like I started like, okay, I would hear, what are you? And I would be like, human or am I? Like, like, and
Yeah.
like, and I think it's expanded now because it used to
Yeah.
be just ethnicity that like everybody, or like, you know, race, or that people would ask. And now what are you is such a big bridge that people are hearing for gender and everything like that. It's such a huge question. And
Yeah.
I think it's slightly insulting that people feel like they can do it, but also I try to think of it this way. They feel curious enough to ask the question, and they feel comfortable enough to ask the question and start a conversation with me. And that is
Mm.
an amazing gift, because I have a platform to talk now.
Yeah.
And you know, hopefully if I don't come off, you know, I've had those days where I want to come off aggressive, you know,
Of
like
course. We all have,
right,
trust me.
right. But if I don't, there's some kind of gift in there that is like, is that I can have this conversation with somebody that probably never thought they could have this conversation with somebody. And that is
Yeah.
really great. Like it's a really good, you know, great thing to do.
Absolutely. I mean, those conversations are never easy to have
No,
anyway.
no,
But and I've always viewed myself as the type of person that like I fully respect and understand when people don't have the capacity to have those conversations, but I do. And you seem like that type of person too. You're like, if you actually want to learn, like I'm willing to sit down with you and like have that
absolutely.
conversation.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that there's, you know, I think the more we make it unattainable to have these conversations, the worse things get, right? So like if I am like, yeah, that like the way you approach me isn't exactly how I'd love to be approached, but we can have this conversation, and I
Mhm.
don't
Mhm.
feel like I've like closed you off. I feel like I don't know, created an ally in some way. You know, um, it's hard. Some days, like I really like, you know, don't love it, you know, and some of the stuff gets kind of invasive, right? Like, what
Yeah.
are you? Oh, can I touch your hair?
Mhm.
Or even like the opposite. Like I've been on set, and people didn't want to touch my hair, like that was their job to do, because they
Oh
felt it would
wow.
be offensive, and they made a big deal about it. And that made me feel even more awkward and
Of
more like
course.
called out. And so there's a balance. I'd rather somebody have a conversation with me, like, what is your boundary? What can we do? Like, I'd rather have that than, no, I don't, yeah, I don't want to touch it. I don't want to be near it, because, you know,
Right.
so there's a balance. I'd rather have, what are you? And then go, okay, you know, like, let's make a joke about this. Cause like, if you were asked, what are you, would you feel a little weird? And yeah, and
Yeah.
then let's have this
Right.
conversation. So that's kind of where
And yeah,
that came from.
it's interesting though that people can't a lot of people can't put themselves in that position of like, if this were reversed, how would you feel? Because it will never be reversed for
Yeah,
most people that are the ones on the, asking those
that's
questions. It
true.
will never be reversed for them.
Mm-mm.
So it's hard to even have some level of like empathy and understanding of like, oh yeah, that would offend me. Oh yeah, I could see why that would offend you, because they truly cannot
Yeah,
grasp why
yeah.
it's offensive or why you would feel uncomfortable. And the other thing, when you're saying when you're on set with hair, like I've definitely had that situation when I've been on set for stuff for like makeup,
Hmm.
right? Like dark skin is just not, for some reason you guys haven't figured out how to do it. But that's what's frustrating for me in this
It's
industry. Like
ridiculous.
still to this day,
Hmm.
how are you not making it mandatory to learn how to do all shades
Hmm.
and all different hair textures, so that you don't have to be put in that position? Because if I'm thinking, if I were a makeup artist or a hairstylist, I would want to be at the top of my game and be like, yes, I know how to do everything. That's why I get hired all the
Hmm.
time, right?
I mean,
But
there are
when
slowly
you don't learn, you're
changes, you
limited.
know, like we
Yes,
have like the
for sure.
Crown Act, which is like making
Yes.
it, you know, like a priority about like whatever your natural hair is, or whatever your hair choices
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
which is a big thing, because you know, like having curly hair, people were like, oh, it's messy. And it's like, well, no, this is just like my natural hair texture,
Yeah.
you know, and there was a lot of pressure to like change my hair. Um, and then there's initiatives that are trying to make makeup artists and hairstylists on set know what they're doing with that kind of stuff. And it's just
Yeah.
it's sad that it's like taken so long. And
Yeah.
I even like remember this story about oh God, I can't remember the actor, but he's from New Girl. And
Mhm.
nobody on set knew how to do his fade. So every
Mm.
morning he would go like super early before his call time, get his fade done out of pocket, and like just so he could look good on set.
Yeah.
And I just think like, oh my God. I mean, now, he's a very successful actor. He's got,
Mhm.
I think it's Woke he has another series called Woke.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but he took a risk on himself because he wanted to take care of himself. And that is so hard. Like I even think about that. I'm like, would I have done something like that? I think there was years where I just let my hair or my look go because I was like, I don't
Mm.
I don't want to deal, I don't want to make waves, I don't want to have to be responsible for this. I just want to show up to work like everybody else. And
Yeah.
that's a lot of pressure. So I commend him for taking that.
Yeah, that's amazing. But also it's sad because you don't wanna, especially as a person of color, be deemed as an issue or a problem
Yeah,
if you bring it up,
yeah,
right?
right. Yeah.
Because that's immediately like that we have that paranoia and that thought, okay, I'm gonna go in, I'm not gonna cause any problems, I'm just gonna do the job. But then you feel uncomfortable and then
Yeah.
you're, sacrificing parts of yourself and then it ends up affecting your work. I mean, it's a whole like mental
Oh
gymnastic
yeah.
thing,
I don't want to
you
be
know?
difficult. I don't want to be
Right.
deemed like aggressive or stuff like that. And
Yeah.
it's so easy for me to like um say something and like I could be like the calmest, and all at once I'm demanding and I'm
Yeah.
aggressive and I'm this and
Mhm.
I'm like, oh gosh, it's so scary. Which is why I think I root everything in humor, because I think it's harder to be like that person's being demanding or aggressive when you make it a joke. It's
Yeah.
probably why I became a comedian, to be honest. you know
Yeah, yeah, no, I understand that. I completely get that. Another thing that I saw that you talk about a lot, and I have so many thoughts about it, and I know it's a very uncomfortable conversation, specifically within our community, but it's colorism,
Mm.
and it's yeah, I mean it's something I've definitely dealt with my whole life, and my own experiences and the reasons behind it have been difficult. But what have you come to learn about colorism? How have you experienced it? And in your conversations, how are you personally on your platforms trying to raise awareness and have that difficult conversation about it? Because it is something that's still a huge issue. And I have my thoughts on, again, how colorism came to be. And we can talk about that in a
Oh
second, but
yeah.
I just want to hear
Well, I
from
mean, it's
you.
so historical, right? And
Yes.
it's so
Yes.
I actually had to have a really tough conversation with a comedian recently who I put on a show that I was on, and he um opened with just making fun of how light-skinned I was and saying I didn't count in the community and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And oh, like
Wow.
10 years ago, I would have just let it go. And I did at the time. I let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And then he posted a clip of it. And this is when I
Mm.
was like, okay, I don't want divisive language to be represented. Uh, and I don't want to be an example of divisive language.
Yeah.
Um, this is a old colonial idea that is bringing us apart and tearing our
Yeah.
community apart, and I don't want to be part of it. Like, I do
Right.
not make me an example of this joke. This is not funny. And he kept going, oh well, all biracial, you know I've been doing this joke for 10 years, and the joke is funny to biracial people. And I was like, no, it's not. They go home and cry, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one that's telling you, do better. And if you're doing a joke for 10 years, you need to let it go.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and so like, I understand there is a privilege for me being light skinned, but I also understand that there is a disadvantage. There are times when I walk in a room, especially when I was a teenager, when I walked into school one day and I knew that I was automatically going to be hated. And I was
Mm.
automatically going to be considered uppity, this, that. And no matter what I did, I was at risk of being bullied, even put hands on. Like I had to move schools once because I did
Mm.
nothing, but like a darker skinned boy liked me wasn't even into boys at the time, had to move schools because I was an uppity light skinned girl that got this boy. And I was like, I don't even want him, whatever, you know? So I understand I have privilege. I understand I also have disadvantages. And I think that um, I am never not going to be honest about either.
Right.
And nor should any of us be. Um, I learned that I can't be quiet about it because internalizing that kind of stuff is just not healthy. There
Yeah.
are certain people that you can't have that conversation with, like I couldn't have that conversation with my grandmother, who, we came out very light skinned, was a very big disappointment to her, you know?
Mm.
I learned to have a relationship with her being respectful of that. Sometimes the older generation, you just can't. It is
You
what
can't.
it
Yeah.
is what it
They're where
is.
they
It
are.
is what it is.
You're not gonna
You
make
just be
too many
like,
changes with
yeah, you
them.
just be like, all right, grandma, thank you, I love you,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think there's a lot of opportunity now for us to stop that kind of stuff, especially in comedy. It is huge in comedy to divide us, to make
Mm.
to make um these jokes about our community. And I um it worries me because every time something like this, like some huge thing happens in our community, we need to be together. We don't need to be
Yeah.
harboring like, you're not good enough, you're not this enough, you're not that enough. We are part of the community. We all have disadvantages because of being people of color,
Yeah.
and we all, in certain circumstances, have advantages that the other don't. So why
Yeah.
not just like stop dividing within? Because that's what they want. They want it. That's
Absolutely. And
history of
that's the
it.
thing. That's what
History of
frustrates me.
it.
Any form of division that is
Yeah.
within a community or any even marginalized groups
Hmm.
as a whole,
Yeah.
it's all under the umbrella of white
Yeah.
supremacy saying, "Oh, fight against each other." And you guys
Yeah.
forget that we're the actual like the puppeteers of the, you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
we're causing all of this. And so yes,
Problem.
it frustrates me, it upsets me greatly because it's like you said, it's exactly what they want.
Hmm.
It's what they've completely manufactured since literally since slavery, like since the
Yes.
beginning of time, right?
Yes.
So to continue that mindset and that behavior, they're just sitting back sipping tea watching.
Yeah. And I at my age cannot stop saying that I don't want to encourage divisiveness in our community.
Yeah.
I also
Yeah.
want to be very honest about it. Like when I wrote this horror movie that is being shopped around right now, and it's about colorism. It's about a female relationship between a darker skinned woman and a lighter skinned woman, and the dynamics
Mm,
of that growing up and being women and going into motherhood and going into relationships and what that looks like, and and the language we say to each other, and how that, you know um I mean, how you can love somebody, and it could be a practically family, or even can be family, and yet there's this colonial cloud, um that is just really like not allowing us to have the closest relationship, the most healthy,
yeah.
non-traumatized relationship. And
Yeah.
how can we make that better? Because I definitely want to be honest with all of my language, even if I'm being, oh, that was my bad. I shouldn't have said, like, I shouldn't have done that. Like, I would rather
Right.
mess up and learn than
Absolutely, absolutely, because you can't grow or have any progress if you don't allow
no,
for that.
no.
And that's the other thing. I think we as people should allow people to make
Mm,
mistakes. I'm fully believe in grace.
mhm.
I don't think that I'm not a fan of like cancel culture. I'm
No.
not a fan of just alienating people or excommunicating them
Mhm.
from messing up. But one, that person also does have to be willing to want to make the change and learn and be educated.
Yes.
But I think that our first step should always be wanting to help people self correct rather than just telling them they're wrong and you shouldn't have done this or
Because that's
whatever
so
and then just
scary. Then
pushing them out.
nobody's ever going to try to change. If
Yeah.
immediately, if you mess up, you're canceled. Nobody's going to try
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
There's no room
Yeah.
for growth. There's just fear. And
Yeah.
I'm going to mess up a lot in life, but hopefully I mess up with enough going, with enough wisdom to correct myself, to learn, to have humility, and change in the future. I mean, there are things that I'm still getting used to, like just in this new, like, the way that we're supposed to be talking to each other, like dialogue changes over the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And I'm a child of the 90s. We said different
Same.
stuff.
Yeah.
We said stuff that is not okay now.
Yeah.
And
For sure.
like, dude, I'm from LA, so I say dude for everything. I'm like, dude. And now it's not cool. It's not cool to say that
Yeah.
because that's divisive language for gender.
Hmm.
I
Or
am,
even like, hey
yeah,
guys.
I say
Hey
hi guys.
guys.
I
Yeah.
say hey
Yeah.
guys. I say hey girl. I say girl. Also
Yes.
divisive. All these things that just spew out of my mouth that I have been saying
Yeah.
forever
Yeah.
can rub somebody the wrong way. Just like what are you, or something about my hair can rub me the wrong way. I am trying. That's all I gotta say. And
Yeah.
I have messed
Absolutely.
up, and so have people messed up on me. So like I'm
Yeah.
like just
But I think that that's why you're like in a position to grow and change because you've been on the
yeah,
receiving
that's
end.
probably
So
true.
you understand. Like empathy truly, is I think you can teach people empathy. I do, but I think it's a very natural thing for certain demographics, right?
Yes.
I do think especially black women
Yeah.
cuz like black women, like that's we have a lot to deal with in those two
We do, we
identities,
do.
right?
And there's a lot of
I do think
responsibility
yeah.
even as
Oh
young,
gosh.
I remember just being very protective of the black men in my life.
Yeah.
And that is a huge responsibility that we have on us very young. Um
Yep.
and I don't think it's always equal. Like I don't think I don't think they always are like immediately like let's protect black women. But like I
Yep.
feel like when we are young, it's like protect the black men in our life.
Yes.
They're in risk,
Yeah.
and I think it also has to be like, okay, let's instill in that also protect black women.
Yes. Like, can we remind y'all? Because you came from us. Like,
Yeah, you came from us. And there's also like a lot of like just not even microaggressions, just aggressions towards us as we grow as women, and things that people feel that they can say to us, feel the way that they can handle us, um,
yeah.
is
Yeah.
is different. And I don't know, like I think that we are taught very much to empathize immediately, but also not necessarily empathize for ourselves and
Yeah. Oh,
advocate for
yeah.
ourselves.
Mm,
It's
yeah.
hard. It's a hard lesson that I'm learning now, and I'm not doing it great always. Like I just was in a relationship where like I was like, okay, well, how do I speak up? And I spoke up louder than I probably, because I was just like, well, this is the way I need this right now, like, or whatever. And I didn't have the empathy or the finesse that I have for other people for myself.
Mm,
So,
mm,
like that is something I'm learning. And
yeah.
like I think we either don't say anything or we say too loud, and we have when
Yeah.
we first are trying to talk about ourselves and talk about our needs. So it's it's a learning process.
Yes. Absolutely. Oh, girl, you said a mouthful, but it's true. It's so true. And yeah, black women, we carry the world on our shoulders, I feel,
Yeah,
and I feel like we do it willingly though. I
yeah,
don't think that I rarely hear black women complain. I really hear us just state the reality of the situation.
yeah,
And I think those are two different things.
yeah,
There's a difference between complaining and just saying like, "Hey, this is what it is. This is hard sometimes,
yeah,
but I'm willing to do it." Especially if nobody's going to show up. Like for example, like voting. Like
yeah,
black women always show up. Like we know
yeah.
we were like, "Nope, this is what we need." Right? We know how to take
There's a
care of
protection.
everyone,
We are
take care of
such
each other. Yeah,
protectors. We are
we really
such
are.
protectors. And I mean, I've seen it in action. I think minority women are in general are just like protectors, such
Yeah.
lionesses.
Yeah.
I remember I was at I was at a birthday party for one of my nephews, and and this white dude told him to get off some kind of like video game, right? And he comes back and he's like, I think he's like 6 or something. He comes back and he's like so sad. We're like, what happened? And like every color woman got up, like synchronized, every
I can
color.
already see
All
it.
the guys just sat there because they were like, they got it. we had all nationalities of women just
I love it.
rise and walk towards this white man, and the man's face, he was like, "I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. I'm sorry." I was like,
Oh my
I was like,
gosh. It's like a scene in a
it
TV
was
show. I could see
crazy.
it.
It was crazy. And I was just like so proud of us, because it was just like this is, and this little boy like represented so much. He's black and he's Latino, and like, it's just like everything, and every single like
Yeah.
woman had his
Oh,
back.
I love it. I love it. That's amazing. Well, with all the things that you talk about in your show and your platforms as a comedian, as an actress, as we push for change, what does that look like to you?
I mean, change for me is like what we were saying, empathy,
Yeah.
and it is the freedom to mess up, but to also learn, right? Like we need that room. That's why I try to make content that is honest and full of humor, because I feel like humor is a way that we're allowed to mess up a little bit. We're allowed to make
Yeah.
we're allowed room to entertain and to, like, put these thought-provoking moments out there with a little bit of a safety net.
Mhm.
So to me, I think comedy has always been um, the progressive way of change. Like I think about like Richard Pryor
Yeah.
and at times Eddie Murphy. you
Mhm.
know,
Or Paul Mooney. Paul
yeah, Paul
Mooney. I thought he
Rudd.
was really great
Yeah,
about bringing
like
issues up.
all
Yeah.
that stuff. Like, and at times Chappelle. you know,
At
at
times.
times, we have some Chappelle issues now, but
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
like there has been some amazing statements that have been made through comedy, and I think it delivers it a little bit easier for people to digest. So for
Yeah.
me, change, or how I want to change the world, is through comedy and honesty and
Love
empathy
that.
and horror. I think horror is
Mhm.
another amazing way to deliver messages. Jordan Peele
Mhm.
is killing it.
Yes.
He's killing it.
Yes. Yes.
Sci-fi
Yes.
and horror have always been ways to deliver hard messages in digestible ways. That's why we had Star Trek.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's such a hard-hitting, thought-provoking TV series from the start, making changes. So I
Yeah.
think for me, change means making more content with empathy, love, humor, and truths, even if it's hard. Like let's cry and laugh together, like is my goal,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. Ah, I love that. Woman after my own heart. Well, can you let everyone know where they can follow you and keep up with the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. You can always go to my website, anastasiawashington.com, and TikTok and Instagram, because we're not doing Twitter no more anyway. At Anastasia Wash, and Anastasia TV on YouTube. Yeah, I have a self-help book coming out, hopefully in the end of February. This is how things go when you're self-publishing.
Yes. Yes, yes. Well, we'll definitely support it and post it when it's out. But thank you so
Thanks so
much
much.
for chatting with me. I really loved talking with you today.
Same, same. This is amazing. Thank you so much for having me.